I'd love to welcome you to this interview between Dr. James Kelley and Dr. Pompa. Dr. James brings both clinical and business experience to L-Nutra. His background is in the development of early-stage medical and biotechnology, in addition to working with and educating physicians, nurses, and other healthcare professionals. Dr. James completed his MD at The Ohio State University and was the inaugural research fellow at the Ohio Health Research and Innovation Institute. He finished his MBA at the University of Southern California, and he has worked with the USC Alfred Mann Institute for Biomedical Engineering, the Lloyd Grief Center for Entrepreneurial Studies, and the Stevens Institute of Technology. He holds a bachelor's degree in cell biology from the University of Virginia and completed his neuroscience master's coursework at Miami University. Prior to joining the L-Nutra team, he was the head of Inventor Services at the Innovation Institute, a partnership with the Cleveland Clinic Innovations Group focused on developing and commercializing new and innovative healthcare solutions. Enjoy this interview.
Welcome, Dr. Jim. I appreciate you taking time for this interview.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to join you.
Yeah, well, this is one of my favorite topics. Fasting in any capacity. Everyone watching this, I'm sure, knows that this is one of my favorite topics in the world. And I'll tell you what, fasting mimicking diet is taking the nation, the world, by storm. So for our viewers who've never heard what a heck a fasting mimicking diet is, perhaps you should explain that. And you're one of the leading doctors in this and have been for a while. So maybe you start with explaining how you got involved in this, but what the heck is a fasting mimicking diet anyway?
Yeah, and those are all great questions. So just by way of background, I'm an MD, MBA. I did a lot of work in early stage medical, basically innovation, funding, patenting, research, and launching and bringing new medical stuff to market. I spent a couple of years at the Cleveland Clinic Innovations Group, but while I was completing my MBA at the University of Southern California, I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Walter Longo, the founder of the fasting mimicking diet. And at the time was working with him to help write the sort of business plan for longevity centers. And then I went about my way, launched a couple medical companies, learned a lot more about sports medicine and nutrition. And then a couple of years later, got approached by Dr. Longo to come on board and help launch the company, which is now L-Nutra, the founders of the Prolon fasting mimicking diet. And I've since transitioned into the medical science liaison role, but I've been here since the launch. And basically what it is the reason I felt so compelled to leave the Cleveland Clinic Innovations Group and come join this is specifically because of what I see us doing in our preclinical research and now in the general wellness sector around really improving lives. Yeah. So what fasting mimicking diets are and what fasting is in general, as I'm sure many of you are already familiar, you've probably heard of intermittent fasting. Well, it turns out if you do a prolonged fast, and we'll go into much greater depth when we talk at the seminar, yeah. But essentially the concept is if you take a couple days away from food, you turn off the body's nutrient sensing pathways. If you turn off those pathways, you turn on the cellular cleanup pathways, specifically autophagy and apoptosis. Mm-hmm. And those are cellular cleanup through both repair and replacing of damaged tissue with brand new stem cells. So the concept of it is basically if you take enough days away, you start the process. You take a couple more days away, you clean it all up and you boost your circulating stem cells. That's the theory that seems to be proven in animal models, and we're gathering data in humans, and some of our clinical trials have already demonstrated that. So we're very excited that over 5 days, you can essentially sort of push a reset button on the body. But the really interesting part is that what Dr. Longo figured out is that these pathways that sense nutrition are not on-off switches. There's a certain amount of food that I can still give you if it's the exact perfect ratio. And this is what we've spent at this point, almost $40 million of federally funded NIH and NCI research money, figuring out what those ratios are where I can give you actual food and still be below the threshold that allows you to turn on those cleanup mechanisms. So I can mimic that fast without actually having to fast. So I make it both easier and I help protect lean body mass and a number of other benefits. So, but again, we'll go into much greater depth on how it works and why it works and probably how we all evolved with this and how it really does impact basically every cell in the body. So
yeah, no doubt. And I can tell you, clinically, we have doctors all around the country, doing this. And I'll tell you, it's something that is pretty remarkable to watch. And I believe every human needs to go through these times of no food, lack of food, like you're saying. I believe we're genetically programmed for it. And I think you're seeing that in some of the studies. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, is this something just humans are missing now? And now we're putting this together and here we're getting results?
Yeah, this really is, that's a great point. It's really is sort of looking to the past to discover our future. If you look at, and again, we'll go into much greater depth later on because there's quite a bit of biochemistry, and this is what the fascinating research is all showing. But if you look at all the way up from yeast to humans, the only way we made it this far was being able to survive between meal A and meal B. So that heavy evolutionary pressure to develop some mechanism to not just survive, but also optimize when you run out of food so that you can go both get to the food and survive, but also beat your neighbor there, which will allow you to pass on your DNA. So there's a huge pressure to have developed this mechanism. We absolutely did. And every cell in the body has that mechanism where when resources are scarce, everything gets better, everything optimizes for the short period of time. So if you go longer than a certain amount of time, you start to get into the danger zone. But it very much seems that all of our ancestors were correct. All of the major religions incorporate some sort of fasting. The concept of it is rock solid. And at this point, the research is backing it up to a level where I don't think you can dispute it. You can't really dismiss it as a fad anymore. There's so much evidence that it's beneficial, not just in healthy people, but in potentially, and this is what we're now exploring, is disease states. Obviously, we're ways away from making any claims, but we're very excited about where that's headed.
Well, and I'll have you talk about some of the studies, and really that's all you can state is here's what we found type thing. But, I can tell you, years ago, gosh, I don't even remember how many years ago it was now. And I read it. There was a gentleman from France, Alfred Nazir. I don't know how to pronounce his name. If you had French, I can't pronounce it. Italian, I'm okay. But anyway, I found, his stuff, and he was basically, calling it a partial fast back in the day. And, basically very similar to the fasting mimicking diet, and found that, some people responded better. It was definitely easier. And some people, like I said, just depending on their condition, really, it was just a better response. I can tell you this, what you all did by putting this partial calorie, low protein, because too high a protein, you break out of this autophagy state. You're describing, right? This cleanup state.
Yeah, too much insulin or too much protein. Yeah,
too much calories, too much protein, right? Or too many carbs even. But it's so you said it. There's these perfect proportions, but you guys put it in boxes, which was absolutely brilliant. Because let me tell you something. Although for years I utilized as a tool partial fasting, it was harder for people than regular fasting. And here's why: because they would start with doing food and they couldn't stop. Right. But what we found was because they had the box of food, it's like, this is what I have to eat today. It was a breakthrough because it was easier for people, even me, because I always said, I find partial fasting harder because I get in my kitchen, I start doing food,
right.
I start not knowing when to stop. It becomes more difficult. But when I have this box of food, it's that simple. 5 days, 5 boxes of food. It was brilliant.
That's exactly what Dr. Longo's goal was, is give you a precise and convenient way to do this. And the only reason that the company exists, he didn't set out as a researcher to create a product. He set out to solve a problem. And when he was doing his research, he was seeing everybody was dropping out of the pure fasts by day 2 because it was just too difficult. And if people tried to make this on their own, like you pointed out, they have trouble getting the ratios right. But beyond that, they just have trouble with the discipline. So Prolon is essentially a carefully disciplined behavioral modification tool. We're keeping you busy. We're telling you exactly how to do it. You can vary it during each day. You just can't bring anything from day 1 to day 2 and day 2 to day 3, etc. But we did the thinking for you. We think it's really good food. It meets all the ratios of all of our clinical trials. And we're trying to make it as clean as possible. We're always refining it, but we think we have a great product. And so far we're seeing really promising results from a general wellness standpoint. A lot of good people sending us a lot of interesting emails. I get a lot of good feedback about what it's doing for people.
My team's going to kill me here. You might kill me. At the seminar, one of the fun things we do at the seminar is we actually, and you're speaking at the seminar, which is going to be awesome.
Very excited about it. Yeah.
We're going into depth and a lot of this new studies. By the way, you all just got $44 million plus from the NIH.
Yeah, we're raking it in. That's all because they've been seeing what the benefits of, because if you think about, again, what we're doing, the father of medicine, Hippocrates, said let medicine be thy food and food be thy medicine. And then sometime in the 1900s and 2000s, we said, nope, we're going to give you a pill. So now what we're doing is saying, well, the body was not designed for one pathway to be blocked by one molecule. It's this whole system that's carefully orchestrated. So we just figured out how to get the right conductor in there.
So what you should do as a company, right, at my seminar?
Yeah. Okay.
The answer may be no, but so we intermittent fast. We fast people during the day, and we're teaching them how to look at their blood ketones, et cetera, and glucose. Yeah. And then we do a little meal partway through the day. It should be the box of food. You guys should donate a box of the food so people try.
I'll see what I can do.
All right.
So yeah, because that is actually the biggest hang up people have. The big concern is that they don't think they're going to be able to do it. And
that's right.
Even though we give you quite a bit of food, people are concerned it's just not going to taste good enough. They aren't going to be able to do it. So once they see that this is really good, nutritious, well-composed food with good flavors and some variety, and they know they're going to be able to get through the 5 days, it gets much easier. So
and I heard, listen, I haven't had your new bar yet. My kids loved your old bar.
Yeah, I think this one's better, and we're coming out with a couple new flavors over the next coming months. I'm hoping,
we're going to be able to sample those at the
I'll bring some samples so everybody can indulge. So
anyways, we're putting you on the spot here, but I'm excited. I really am. We've been teaming up with you all because we believe so strongly, obviously in fasting, but we believe strongly in the ProLone product. We really do. It makes everything easier, and the power of the fasting mimicking diet, and it really is amazing. Look, there's many people who, water fasting, which I've used for years, right? But it's too hard. This is safer for metabolic people, for people who are on different medications. There's many reasons why this has been a godsend for us. And we're going to learn about more of it. But kind of, just talk a little bit about some of the exciting studies that you've done and are doing.
Yeah, sure. And obviously a little bit careful because I'll caveat none of this has been evaluated by the FDA to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. But we do have some really interesting preclinical results in animal models around disease states and the future of this will. And we're doing human trials in a lot of different states, such as neurodegenerative. We're looking at Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, and the impact of fasting. Because in our animal trials, we demonstrated that you can halt MS progression in animal models of MS in 85% of mice, and you can actually reverse it and in some cases cure it in about 18%. So really exciting results. That's part of why the government gave us enough money to look at it in humans. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I believe that's published, that's open information. We're also looking at other trials, including some autoimmune conditions, mostly around dietary, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, and we're going to be looking at obviously rheumatoid and lupus. We think there's a lot of promise around a number of other conditions. Some of the ones that I think we may have a big impact in are still being evaluated for whether how we would do those trials. But basically, since every cell in the body responds to fasting, every cell in the body is fair game to look at for a lab test and a clinical trial. So very, very exciting preclinical results. And in humans, we're starting to get the ball rolling in some of the more important stuff. We're looking at cancer right now. I think we're about a year away from publishing a really, really interesting paper on fasting in combination with chemotherapy and fasting mimicking diets and showing what it can do for people. So,
well, again, I was out at the U.S. Fasting Summit. You all did USC Fasting Summit. And there was, one scientist after another showing results of their studies with cancer, and just exciting stuff. And again, these are studies, obviously, they made it clear what they're doing in animals and what they're doing now and doing in humans.
And it's a different product than Prolon. So
it was. Anyway, it was totally, and to be clear, but the principle is solid here. And I found a study, and I think I put it in my book. It was, that humans right now are in a constant feast state. And to go back to the point we made earlier, we're not forced to have these times of famine. And that's a mistake. And in this particular study, they talked about how they believe that because we are in this constant feast state, that it's leading to, problems like cancer. So, I think you're right. It's programmed in our DNA. And I think a lot of the results are just because we're doing something that we should genetically be doing.
My philosophy for certain, yeah. So I think variety is the spice of life. It may actually also be the source of life. So I do think that changing of the metabolic guard and letting your body get a variety of of states that it was designed to deal with. Visceral fat is your safety net for times of lean, and we're burning through it. We're getting the body to use it up.
Absolutely.
And then in some cases, if you're at your ideal weight, it'll replenish it fairly quickly, but that just makes sense. The body wants to refuel the emergency tank. So a lot of really interesting stuff. I totally agree with your philosophy. I'm excited to talk to everybody about it and share all the nuances of what we know and what we don't know. So
we just interviewed Dominic D'Agostino, who's doing research for the Defense Department, and he was talking about these times of famine. It's really a time where you get the ketones much higher. And going in again, he was talking about research that he's doing on, what ketones do for the brain, what ketones.
Beta hydroxybutyrate. Yeah.
Right. And people have to understand that, it's very hard oftentimes to hit the therapeutic levels of ketones without doing some type of massive caloric restriction feast in our famine states. And that was to his point as well. I think an exciting thing for me is the anti-aging topic. And I know that we brought up Dr. Walter Longo, who's doing a lot of these studies. He backed into this because I think it was you can tell the story better than I, but his predecessor, he was in the Biosphere 2 project, which was basically, okay, all these studies are showing caloric restriction is the key to anti-aging. But yet clinically, I can tell you that it doesn't work. If you're in a caloric restricted state too long, the body goes into the starvation mode and bad things start to happen. And that's kind of what happened in the Biosphere 2 project. It was a fail, but from that, I believe Longo starts saying, well, what if we did shorter periods of time? Tell that story because this really reflects that.
I'll save that for so we'll say you did an excellent teaser. So we'll save that for the whole thing. But
this is the key to anti-aging, in my opinion.
Well, I'll tell you, to me, the breakthrough was the Laron population in Ecuador, the group with the IGF-1 mutation that doesn't respond to protein. So they never have, they're about 3 feet tall. So they don't respond to growth hormones or they don't activate growth hormone because the protein doesn't trigger it. But they also have never gotten any cancer or diabetes. And these are 2 age-related diseases. So we now know that height and growth are related to age and aging. So IGF-1 is a trigger for that pathway. So that was sort of a little bit of an aha of, okay, well, if IGF-1 is a trigger, can I get some of the benefits of anti-aging by calorically restricting for a very short period of time at a very specific window of caloric restriction and give you all the enough benefits that are allowing these people to live long, healthy lives without restricting the growth. And that's something we're doing a lot of research on. The theories look sound and the preclinical research is promising. Mice live about 15% longer. They get less cancer, less heart disease, less autoimmune disease, less diabetes, regenerate nerve tissue. Their immune system appears to function stronger. So now we just have to recreate in humans because obviously we are not just big mice. We are more complex organisms and our life cycles are longer and more things play into it. So, but I do think fasting is absolutely a huge part of the puzzle. And I think we're making headway into proving it. So,
no doubt about it. And I appreciate you guys and love all of you and glad to be on your team. I'll tell you that much. And
we're glad to have you.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, y'all need to be at the seminar because rest of the story. But no kidding. I mean, you're going to learn a lot. And I have to say this, share this with not just your doctor friends, but your friends and family, because this is the first time we actually have a whole day that the public's allowed into the seminar. So you'll get to hear this cutting edge new information, man. Dr. James, you're a wealth of knowledge, man.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to speaking with all you guys in person. So come on down.
Yeah, and y'all can you can look at the dates of the seminar right here on this page, and also you can sign up for the seminar right here on this page. So do that because you're not going to want to miss this, man. We have so many incredible practitioners and doctors, scientists all here. So you need to hear it. So thank you, man. Appreciate you. And thanks for being on the team. We'll see you there.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to meeting all you guys in person. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Bye.